In 1905, a 4-year-old orphan with no money, no factory, and no watchmaking training whatsoever walked into a London office and decided he would build the most recognized name in luxury. Everyone in Switzerland laughed. Every banker said no. Every watchmaker called him a fraud. His name was Hans Wilsdorf, and in less than 20 years, kings would beg to wear his watches. This is how a man who had nothing created the name that means everything. Hans Eberhard Wilhelm Wilsdorf was born on the 22nd of March 1881 in Kulmbach, a small town in Bavaria, Germany. His father, Ferdinand, ran a modest ironmongery business. His mother, Anna, kept the household together. By all accounts, it was a stable, middle-class life. And then it fell apart. In 1892, Anna died. Hans was 11. A year later, Ferdinand followed her. By the age of 12, Hans Wilsdorf was an orphan. His uncle sold the family business, took the proceeds, and placed Hans and his siblings in a boarding school in Coburg, about 25 miles from home. His inheritance was locked in a trust he could not touch until adulthood. In his own words, my mother's early death was soon followed by that of my father's, and at age 12, I was an orphan. But here is where the story turns. Most people in that position collapse. Wilsdorf did the opposite. He threw himself into his studies. He became fluent in German, French, and English, 3 languages that would later open every door in the watch industry. And he developed an obsession that would define his entire life. Precision, not just in watches, in everything. Language, business, presentation, details that others ignored, Wilsdorf memorized. At 19, he left Germany for La Chaux de Fonds in Switzerland, the heart of the global watch trade, and took a job with a company called Cuno Corten, which exported Swiss pocket watches around the world. His job was simple: write letters in 3 languages. But what he actually did was study. He studied the mechanisms. He studied the market. He studied what customers actually wanted versus what watchmakers thought they wanted. And he noticed something that nobody else seemed to care about. Pocket watches were dying. They were big, fragile, inaccurate, and inconvenient. Wilsdorf believed the future belonged to something smaller, something you could strap to your wrist. At the time, wristwatches were considered jewelry for women. No serious man would wear one. The movements were too small to keep accurate time. Every watchmaker in Switzerland dismissed the idea. Wilsdorf did not care what every watchmaker in Switzerland thought. In 1903, he moved to London. In 1905, at the age of 24, he partnered with his brother-in-law Alfred Davis and founded a small company called Wilsdorf and Davis. They had no factory. They imported Swiss movements from a manufacturer named Egler and Bien, placed them into cases made in England, and sold the finished watches under various brand names. It was a modest operation. Nobody noticed. But Wilsdorf was already planning something much bigger. He wanted a single name, a name that would be short, easy to pronounce in every language, and elegant on a watch dial. He claimed he tried every combination of the alphabet. He rode the top deck of London horse-drawn buses, reading shop signs, looking for inspiration. And eventually, he landed on a word that had no meaning in any language, but sounded like luxury in all of them: Rolex. He registered the trademark in 1908, and from that moment forward, every decision he made was aimed at one single goal: making Rolex the most trusted name in timekeeping on Earth. To understand why Rolex dominates today, you have to understand 3 inventions. Not 3 watches, 3 problems that nobody could solve until Wilsdorf solved them. Problem 1. Wristwatches were not taken seriously. In 1910, just 5 years after founding his company, Wilsdorf sent a small Rolex wristwatch to the School of Horology in Bienne, Switzerland, for official chronometer testing. This was unheard of. Chronometer certification was reserved for large marine chronometers and precision pocket watches, serious instruments. A wristwatch applying for certification was like a bicycle entering a Formula One race. The watch passed. It received a Class A precision certificate, the first wristwatch in history to earn that distinction. 4 years later, in 1914, Wilsdorf sent another Rolex wristwatch to the Kew Observatory in England, which was considered the most demanding testing facility in the world. The watch earned a Class A certificate there too, a distinction previously given only to marine chronometers. In one stroke, Wilsdorf proved that a tiny watch strapped to your wrist could be as precise as instruments designed for naval navigation. The industry could no longer laugh. Problem 2, water killed watches. Early wristwatches were extremely vulnerable to moisture. Dust, sweat, rain, any of it could destroy the movement. Cases had gaps at the crown, the case back, and the bezel where water and particles could enter. Watchmakers accepted this as an unsolvable limitation. Wilsdorf did not. In 1926, Rolex introduced the Oyster case. It was revolutionary. The case was machined from a single block of metal. The bezel screwed down onto the middle case, the case back screwed on. And most critically, the winding crown, the biggest weak point on every watch ever made, screwed down into the case like a submarine hatch. For the first time in history, a wristwatch was sealed from the outside world, but nobody believed it worked. A claim is just a claim until you prove it. So in October 1927, Wilsdorf did something that no watch company had ever attempted. He gave a Rolex Oyster to Mercedes Gleitze, a young English typist who was about to attempt to swim the English Channel. She tied the watch around her neck on a ribbon and entered the freezing water at Cap Gris-Nez, France. After more than 10 hours in near-freezing conditions, Gleitze had to be pulled from the water due to hypothermia. She did not finish the swim, but the watch did. When they checked it, the Oyster was still running perfectly. The next day, Wilsdorf bought a full-page advertisement on the front page of the London Daily Mail. The headline read, "The Wonder Watch That Defies the Elements." Below it, a testimonial from Gleitze herself confirming the watch had kept perfect time through the entire ordeal. This was not just an advertisement, it was the birth of modern brand ambassadorship. Every watch company that puts a celebrity in an ad today, they are following a playbook that Hans Wilsdorf wrote in 1927. Problem 3. You had to wind your watch every day. Automatic winding mechanisms existed before Rolex. Various inventors had tried spring-based systems, but none of them were reliable or efficient enough for daily use. Wilsdorf wanted a watch that wound itself through the natural movement of the wearer's wrist. No manual winding required, ever. In 1931, Rolex patented the Perpetual rotor. Unlike previous designs that swung back and forth in a limited arc, the Perpetual rotor rotated a full 360 degrees in both directions, capturing energy from even the slightest wrist movement. It was elegant, efficient, and practically invisible to the wearer. You simply put the watch on in the morning, and it kept running. This mechanism became the foundation for virtually every automatic watch made since. When you see an automatic watch today from any brand, at any price, the fundamental architecture of its self-winding system traces directly back to what Rolex built in 1931. And then came the final piece. In 1945, Rolex introduced the Datejust, the first wristwatch, to display the date in a small window on the dial that changed automatically at midnight. It sounds simple now. In 1945, it was magic. 3 innovations. 3 problems that the entire Swiss watch industry said could not be solved. Precision, waterproofing, and automatic winding. Wilsdorf solved all 3 within 25 years. Here is the part of the Rolex story that most people miss. The innovations were real, the engineering was genuine. But what turned Rolex from a respected watchmaker into the most famous luxury brand on earth was not the product, it was the story Hans Wilsdorf told about the product. After Mercedes Gleitze, Wilsdorf realized something profound. People do not buy watches for the movement inside. They buy watches for what the watch represents. And if you attach your watch to people who do extraordinary things, the watch absorbs their legend. So he started placing Rolex watches on the wrists of the most remarkable people alive. In 1935, Sir Malcolm Campbell wore a Rolex when he broke the land speed record at over 300 miles per hour at the Bonneville Salt Flats. Rolex was there. In 1953, Sir Edmund Hillary and Tenzing Norgay reached the summit of Mount Everest, the first confirmed climbers to stand on top of the world. On Hillary's wrist was a Rolex Oyster Perpetual. Rolex was there. In 1960, the bathyscaphe Trieste descended to the bottom of the Mariana Trench, 35,798 feet below the surface, the deepest point on Earth. Strapped to the outside of the vessel was a specially designed Rolex Deep Sea Special. When it returned to the surface, the watch was still running. Rolex was there. Do you see the pattern? The highest mountain, the deepest ocean, the fastest car. Wherever human achievement pushed its limits, Rolex made sure to be on the wrist of the person doing it. And then Wilsdorf extended this strategy beyond exploration into culture and sport. Golf, tennis, yachting, Formula One, Wimbledon, the Masters, the Oscars. Rolex did not just sponsor these events, it became synonymous with them. This was not accidental. Wilsdorf understood something that most brands still do not understand 70 years later. You do not sell luxury by explaining why your product is good. You sell luxury by making people feel that owning your product places them in the company of greatness. Every watch brand in 2026 that puts a celebrity in an advertisement, that sponsors a sporting event, that aligns itself with achievement and prestige, they are all running a version of the strategy that Hans Wilsdorf invented nearly a century ago. He did not just build a watch company. He built the template for how luxury brands operate. Now here is where the story of Rolex becomes truly strange. Hans Wilsdorf married Florence Frances May Crotty in 1911. She was his partner in life and in business. They had no children. When Florence died in 1944, Wilsdorf was devastated. And he made a decision that would make Rolex unlike any other company in the world. In 1944, he established the Hans Wilsdorf Foundation in Geneva, a private charitable trust under Swiss law. And in 1960, shortly before his own death at the age of 79, he transferred his entire ownership of Rolex to the foundation. Let that sink in. He did not sell it. He did not take it public on the stock exchange. He did not hand it to a nephew or a business partner. He gave one of the most valuable companies on earth to a charity. Today, the Hans Wilsdorf Foundation is the sole owner of both Rolex SA and Tudor SA. There are no shareholders. There is no board of investors demanding quarterly returns. No luxury conglomerate, not LVMH, not Richemont, not Swatch Group, has any stake in the company. What this means in practice is extraordinary. Because Rolex has no external shareholders, it has absolutely no obligation to maximize short-term profits. There is no quarterly earnings call, there is no pressure to cut costs or chase trends. The foundation reinvests heavily into research, development, and manufacturing, and donates a substantial portion of profits to charitable causes, primarily education, social welfare, and cultural initiatives in Geneva and across Switzerland. Under Swiss law, because the foundation is a charitable entity, it operates with significant financial privacy. Rolex does not publicly disclose its revenue, its profits, or its charitable giving. No annual report, no press conference, total secrecy, and this is the final secret behind Rolex's dominance. While every other luxury watch brand answers to shareholders, analysts, and the stock market, Rolex answers to nobody. It can take the long view on everything. It can spend years developing a new material or movement without worrying about next quarter's numbers. It can deliberately limit production to maintain scarcity without an investor screaming about lost revenue. This is why you cannot walk into a Rolex dealer and buy a Submariner off the shelf. This is why waitlists exist. This is why Rolex feels different from every other luxury brand. Because structurally, it is different. It is a company that operates like a for-profit business, but is owned by a charitable trust with no financial pressure from the outside world. Hans Wilsdorf did not just build a watch company, he built a fortress. And he designed it so that no one, not even the richest person on earth, could ever take it over. So after everything you have just heard, is Rolex actually worth your money? The honest answer is, it depends on why you are buying one. If you are buying a Rolex as a pure horological investment, as a piece of mechanical engineering to be appreciated for its movement architecture, there are better options. Grand Seiko offers superior finishing at a lower price. Omega offers more advanced anti-magnetic technology. Lang & Sony offers movement decoration that Rolex does not even attempt. But if you are buying a Rolex for what it represents, a century of innovation, a brand that cannot be acquired, a name recognized in every country on earth, and a watch that has been to the top of Everest and the bottom of the ocean, then nothing else competes. Here is our crown pick recommendation by price range. If you are just entering the world of Rolex, the Oyster Perpetual is the purest expression of what the brand stands for. No date, no bezel complications, just the Oyster case, the perpetual movement, and over 100 years of heritage in a clean, timeless package. Retail starts around $6,000 to $7,000, but the secondary market can be friendlier depending on the dial color. If you want the icon, the watch that most people picture when they hear the word Rolex, it is the Submariner, the dive watch that defined dive watches. First introduced in 1953, it has barely changed because it did not need to. Retail is around 9 to 10,000, and certain references hold or increase in value over time. And if you want the watch that presidents, CEOs, and old money families have quietly worn for decades, the Datejust. It was the first watch to display the date automatically, and its fluted bezel on a Jubilee bracelet is one of the most elegant silhouettes in watchmaking. It starts around 9,000 for steel and goes up significantly in gold or two-tone configurations. One practical note, buying at retail is extremely difficult right now due to waitlists. The pre-owned market is legitimate and often the fastest path to ownership. Trusted dealers and authenticated platforms are your best options, and every recommendation is linked in the description below. Hans Wilsdorf was orphaned at 12. He had no training, no factory, and no money. He built the most recognized watch brand in the history of the world and then gave it away to a charity so that no one could ever destroy what he had created. If Rolex earned its crown, the question is, what brand deserves it next? Next week, we tell that story. Crown Pick set the standard. Every watch mentioned in this video is linked in the description. Subscribe so you do not miss what comes next.